This video is sponsored by Ramen. Over the course of doing these character design challenges, I've gotten a lot of requests to do a food-focused episode. I feel like that's a pretty no-brainer prompt for this sort of thing, but it could also be a bit cheesy. Ignore that most of my character designs are super camp anyways. It just sounds like it would be hard to pull a design like that off and make it look actually cool. So for a while, I just didn't feel like doing it. No thanks, too hard. But then I was like, oh yeah, isn't that kind of the point? So fine, I'll do it. You can stop harassing me. Today we're going to be focusing on some of my favorite foods, and there's an added layer to the challenge this week because I have to look at references of these foods the entire time. Foods that I don't have on hand. This video is gonna make me so hungry, it's not fair. And I love food, so it was actually a little difficult to settle on which foods to use, but I decided on some of my favorites. Ramen, pizza, ice cream, and pierogis. And this week I also wanted some variety on which character archetypes I'm going to turn them into, so I settled on a rogue/ninja, a knight/paladin, a witch/mage, and a healer/cleric. I understand all of those are 2 classifications, but for my mood boards I have obviously really tasty looking pictures of food, but they're mostly made up of other similar character designs that kind of just capture the general vibe that I'm going for, and a few historical/cultural clothing influences like Polish and Italian clothing. To get into my thumbnails, I was obviously feeling pretty challenged by this prompt, so I did try to make a lot of the big decisions during the thumbnail phase. I was mainly focusing on taking a few key elements from each food and making them the focal points for each character, like the egg hat and ramen hair, mozzarella lace, pierogi poncho. At the same time, I was trying to make sure that the archetype of each character was coming through, so I tried to translate the focal point of the food into the archetypal focal point of the clothing. So for example, ice cream cone witch hat, carrot katanas. This is where the designs really start to border on that camp territory, but I tried my best to make it dance the line between camp and subtlety to varying degrees of success. But another thing that really helped me was using embroidered patterns as key elements in some of the designs to blend them into the fantasy elements a little bit more. I don't know about you, but all this talk of ramen is making me really hungry. Well, lucky for both of us, this video is sponsored by Ramen. Ramen is a healthy, high-protein craft ramen that's made with quinoa, packed with vitamins, fiber, and micronutrients, and has around 50% less sodium than leading brands. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it before on the channel, but I'm an absolute ramen fiend. It might actually be my favorite food. I eat it for every single cheat meal, but I also try to be healthy and stay active. I like to run, do bodyweight workouts, and I also started doing taekwondo this year, so normal ramen doesn't always align with my eating goals, as delicious as it is. I've kind of been trying to put on muscle the past couple of months, so whenever I heard the phrase protein ramen, I said, hello, yes? It was kind of a match made in heaven. I am just so excited to give these a taste. Hello, and welcome to the sewing table in the corner of my basement. So the ramen that I've prepared is the garlic pork tonkatsu, because that is traditionally my favorite flavor of ramen. That's like what I order at every single restaurant that I go to. Just an absolute fiend for it. Significantly more difficult to use with a lavalier microphone at the end. Now let's have a taste. Those are some good news right there. Chewy, that's what I like to see. Let's try the broth. The thing I like about this broth is the depth of flavor. It's not just all salt, there's other things going on. It has notes, everything just going on here. I'm a fan of it. This is delicious. As a busy creative, it can be insanely difficult to eat healthy, and I hate meal prepping most of the time, so healthy ramen that cooks in 3 minutes, literally perfect for me. Vite offers tons of traditional ramen flavors as well as plant-based packs, and they even have a ton of recipes on their website if you ever want to get adventurous in the kitchen. Their marketing is just hilarious and relatable. And Vite is also a small Asian-owned business that operates and manufactures in the USA, and they're committed to ethical business practices by treating all of their employees fairly, paying living wages, and offering a huge list of benefits that honestly everyone deserves. Click the link below to get a bundle that gives you free shipping in the contiguous USA, and don't forget to use my code PRICKLY at checkout for an additional 10% off. That's viteramen.com/prickly, or just click the link below and use the code PRICKLY. Thank you so much to Vite Ramen for sponsoring this video and enabling my ramen addiction. Now let's get started. First up is the pizza knight, or pizza paladin, if you will. So starting out, I thought that this would be the most challenging of all the designs, and in some ways it kind of was, but in the end I think that this also turned out being one of my favorites. I really enjoy how it looks, and I think it does a better job at achieving some of that subtlety that I was talking about. And I think some of the reason for that is just that conceptually, I think the idea that I had for this one going in was a little bit stronger than some of the others. As many of you know, whenever I create character designs, I love pulling from fashion history. So since pizza, maybe alongside pasta, is like one of the most quintessentially Italian foods, I really wanted to pull from Italian Renaissance fashion for some of this, especially since for some court dress and like noble costumes, a lot of the detailing can get really elaborate, which I thought would accommodate some of my embroidery ideas really well. So the ideas that I ended up taking from Italian costumes were sort of vague. I mainly took the staples of some of the silhouettes that were popular at the time and translated them into my design. For example, high waists, square necklines, long full skirts, and of course, really elaborate ruffling and slashes on sleeves. Head coverings in this time were also very popular, but I didn't want to give her a hood of any kind, but I noticed that pearls and beading was really popular, so that's something else that I took for my design. And since she is a knight, a paladin, I thought that all of this would pair beautifully with some armor. I did try to look up Italian Renaissance armor, but a lot of it seemed like very bog standard armor. There were some cool etchings that were for more like ceremonial armor, but that's really the only thing I could find. Didn't really go the best with the silhouette that I was going for, so I mainly opted to design my own armor, which also proved to be extremely difficult because the armor that I was coming up with just was not going with the silhouette of the dress that I had in mind. Fun stuff. I decided to go with traditional armor pieces, you know, pauldrons, breastplate, greaves, that sort of thing, but the shapes are largely inspired by pizza and specifically oregano leaves. I figured that nature is a pretty chivalrous concept. It already goes along well with the idea of a knight, so I thought that would bring a little bit of subtlety to my armor. But I did struggle a good bit with the shapes of the armor just because I was trying to maintain the silhouette of the Renaissance fashion that I was going for. Particularly, I was trying to make the pauldrons so that they didn't cover up the sleeves and those sort of sloped shoulders, and I was also trying to kind of maintain that square neckline as much as possible, as well as a high waistline. So there were some compromises that kind of had to be made. I didn't go for a square neckline at the end because she needed some kind of armor, but I did kind of end up going with a boob window against my better judgment. It's a design choice. But that did allow me to add a breastplate that looks a little bit more like a bodice, and of course maintain the sleeves that I think are just perfect for this, because the ruffles that I added remind me a lot of crust or mozzarella cheese. And speaking of cheese, that brings me to another one of my favorite design elements from this. I decided that I wanted to add drippy cheese somewhere in this design, and most naturally I thought that adding a lace cascading down the skirt that looks like mozzarella cheese dripping was the best way to do that. So that kind of transformed the skirt into having basically a very vague pizza pattern. I thought it would be perfect for the hem to look like pizza crust and then also have some of that lace on the very bottom, and then that basically trickles up into having like tomato sauce and other toppings. And then that's where the embroidery comes in. I added a bunch of little tiny pizza topping and ingredient embroideries onto the hem. And then since it's kind of an open skirt so that she can still do combat, I have some trim along the hem that also has a bit of that like oregano motif along the edge. And like I said, that motif also carries throughout the rest of the armor. And then there's just little pizza references everywhere in this design. In case it wasn't already obvious enough, all of the ruffles on her sleeves also have little pizza toppings. The very top of her pauldrons are also slices of pizza. And then I also based a lot of this on a supreme pizza just because I love a good supreme pizza myself. I like everything on it. So there's also black olive motifs all over the place. And if things already were not obvious enough, I kind of gave her an axe that's supposed to look like one of those artisan pizza cutters that you would see in an actual Italian pizza kitchen where they bring it out of the oven, they like cut it with a giant thing. Yeah, that's her axe. I was also on call with one of my friends through a lot of this, and she was like, you have to add a pizza pan to this somewhere. So she has a shield that is her pizza pan, and for good measure, she also has a bottle of olive oil and a bottle of wine on her belt. All of her colors are then just based on straight up a supreme pizza, and in the end, honestly, subtlety who? Alright, next up we have Miss Ramen Girl, and ramen is of course my favorite food, so I was like really looking forward to working on this one. This was actually the prompt that made me want to do this video in the first place, because I started getting ideas and I was like, well, we're doing this now. So like I said in the intro, I kind of wanted to go like a stealth rogue ninja kind of route for this character. So from there, my brain went right to anime. I mean, it's ramen, Ramen and anime kind of just go together. And I know I kind of set the precedent for taking historical inspiration for these from my pizza girl, but the thing about ramen is some of its history is so regional. And in modern times, we very much associate ramen with Japan, but a lot of its roots also come from China. And that history of how it originated and evolved is just very complicated, and I don't have time to unpack that and do the research this week, so anime. So a lot of my inspiration for this design did come from other ramen girls that I saw on Pinterest, plus my friend who I was on call with who was like, you have to give her an egg hat. It is essential, which honestly, I have to agree. So probably the biggest concept for this going in was I knew that I was gonna give her super duper long ramen noodle hair. I think it was the most obvious, clear, visual way to add noodles to this design. So I did that, and I made them look super drippy and like they are fresh out of some broth, which is already making me hungry while recording this. So the base layer of her outfit is just a little dress that is red, and it has some patterning on it that is a little bit inspired by the marbling and ribbing on pork belly that you would get in a tonkatsu or a miso. Then she has a little belt that is inspired by Naruto or fish cakes. Hanging off of that, she has two pieces of hip armor, which are just giant eggs. This waist piece fastens with a big pink rope in the back. I was mostly just trying to bring more color variation into the design. Then on her arms, she's got some little subtle pieces of shoulder armor, and draping off of that are some long green sleeves that are supposed to look like nori or seaweed. The motif on those is supposed to also look like green onions. I didn't include an overt reference to bamboo shoots, but I think an argument could be made that the shoes look a little bit like bamboo shoots. And last but not least, I also gave her twin katanas that are supposed to kind of reference chopsticks since there's two of them, but specifically the handles on those are supposed to look like little chopped up carrots that you would also get in like a miso. And the sheaths on her back also look like nori. There are a few common ramen ingredients that I sort of missed, but these are all of the main ones that I normally get whenever I order. Another one that I included just for fun was some shrimp that are supposed to kind of look like throwing stars or shuriken or something along those lines. Once again, leaning full on into camp. I think by the end, the only toppings that I didn't really reference would be like corn, bean sprouts, and shiitake mushrooms. I wish I had included the shiitake mushrooms because those are really good in ramen. I forgot. I couldn't figure out a way to do it. Oh, and I almost forgot. She also has very light colored freckles that are kind of supposed to look like sesame seeds. Like I said, the main idea behind these designs was to take these very referential food things and translate them into clothing items that are very popular with these respective archetypes. And I have to say, I think that this one was very successful. She looks like a ninja, and she also very much looks like ramen. Next up, we have my all-time favorite dessert, and that is ice cream. Ice cream is so simple, but it's so good, and it never fails to satisfy my sugar cravings. Another great thing about ice cream is that it can look so pretty, so I was definitely not wanting for references to base this character on. Pinterest is an absolute treasure trove of pretty pictures of ice cream that make me so very hungry and intensely jealous. So one of my concerns about the first two designs was their color palettes were looking a little bit too similar. So for this one, I just went in an entirely different direction, and I was like, alright, we're all gonna do just the loudest, most pastel colors possible. Ice cream can be a little bit vague, so I kind of based this on like an ice cream sundae or a very elaborate ice cream cone that you would get at like a state fair or something like that. So that way I could include a bunch of toppings that I really like maraschino cherries and strawberries and waffles and sprinkles, chocolate syrup, all the good stuff. But if you remember, this character is also a witch, so naturally, I mean, not the most original idea, but the most obvious starting point was ice cream cone witch hat. This was an obvious starting point because it meant that I could decorate it with all sorts of different ice cream toppings. I have multiple ice cream scoops on it. I've got some whipped cream, some Pockies, some waffles, strawberries, maraschino cherries, sprinkles, just the works. And from there, I was like, I guess we're rolling with an ice cream cone as the main motif for this design. So from there, I kind of treated it like armor. I also gave her sort of an ice cream cone half skirt because once again, the shapes fit, and I also like creating visual parallels between different characters in the group, so this kind of references back to pizza. Ice cream and pizza kind of go together, so I think it works. And to match that, I also gave her some very chunky ice cream cone gloves, as well as an ice cream cone themed staff. And let me just tell you, it was 100% on this design where I was like, I give up. I'm leaning full on into camp. There is nothing subtle about this design. To absolutely break down all subtlety, I gave her a bunch of ice cream scoops and some whipped cream and sprinkles and strawberries at the bottom hem of the skirt, along with some chocolate sauce dripping down the sides. And all of the accessories kind of got that same treatment where they have little toppings and chocolate sauce and sprinkles on them, just to add a little bit more visual cohesion. For the other pieces of clothing, I decided to pull kind of from like soft Lolita, like kawaii fashion. There's some historical references in there that I think work really well for like a witch archetype. So the ice cream cone skirt kind of references some kind of historical skirt understructure, and it is attached to a little corseted belt, and underneath that she has a little frilly peasant shirt that has some very poofy sleeves, and the bottom of that kind of pokes under the belt, creating a subtle little skirt layer. But instead of an actual skirt, I also gave her little poofy pantaloons because that's something else that I see a lot in that like soft Lolita kawaii community. And to kind of complete the look, she's got a little Peter Pan style collar with a strawberry in the center and some thigh-high socks and some little boots, because I think those are also pretty popular fashion choices for this style. And then of course, just some super long two-tone pink hair to really pull everything together here. In the end, I do like this design. I think that she's really cute, but I did definitely just lean all the way into camp. And I feel like there's a couple of things that I could tweak and adjust to make the design work a little bit better visually. The proportions and the shapes to me are still just like a little bit off. I can't quite put my finger on what it is. Maybe the half skirt would work better as a full skirt or a shorter skirt. I don't know. One thing I do really like about this design though is the colors and how all of them go together. I mean, it's not super difficult to make pastels look good together, but I just think the way they look with the dark browns and the light browns is really satisfying, especially alongside all of the like really stark bits of contrast. I love contrast in a good design, so that to me came out looking very satisfying. But anyways, I think she's cute, she does the job, and there is no denying that she's definitely ice cream. Alright, last we have Pierogi Girl, the most niche of all of the foods that I am transforming into characters today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with a pierogi, it's basically a little dumpling. The outside is dough. It's normally like steamed, or most popularly I think sauteed with caramelized onions, and then inside it can have a variety of different fillings. The one that I am most used to is potato and cheese. That's like the most Pittsburgh of pierogi fillings. They're usually served up on a bed of caramelized onions with maybe some green onions and little bits of bacon on top, maybe a little bit of cheese. It's like a very loaded baked potato forward kind of dish, and it is delicious. But you can also put a bunch of other things in pierogis, like vegetables and meat and mushrooms, stuff like that. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure the main inspiration for pierogis came from Asia, but the potato and cheese pierogi version I think is very much a Polish dish. So for my pierogi girl, I'm pulling from some specific images, some that have like bacon and parsley and caramelized onions as toppings, and also some that are like really well browned and sauteed, because those are just the tastiest to me. And the character inspiration I'm going for is of course a cleric or a healer. So I wanted this character to be very soft. I want them to have a very nurturing, nursing personality, and I also want them to have some kind of a link to cooking. I figure that cooking plays a part in how this character uses their healing magic, and every group that's going on an adventure needs someone who can cook. Are you telling me that that's not an essential member of the team? You're wrong. And of course, as a cleric, I feel like they have some kind of divine ability to make the just best tasting food ever, and the food has incredible healing factors. So of course, as a pierogi healer, I began the design with the basis of a pierogi poncho or a pierogi capelet, whatever fits it the best. I thought that it would be such a cute way to fit the silhouette of a pierogi into this character's wardrobe, and also a really cute way to include some embroidery into the design, because I did try to do a little teeny bit of research into traditional Polish costumes, and one of the most popular things is definitely patterning, embroidery, that sort of thing. There are especially a lot of floral motifs in some of the traditional costumes that I could find, so that's something that I tried to bring into this design. So I didn't carry a ton of Polish fashion into this design, but that is an idea that did kind of translate over. Another very subtle detail is I noticed that bodices with a little bit of a peplum on the bottom, for lack of a better term, were very popular. So even though she has a little capelet on, you can't see most of it, she does have a little bit of that just poking out the bottom. On her lower half, I gave her long stockings and some little flat blue shoes, along with a full green ruffly circle skirt and a blue embroidered apron. I also gave her a couple of little medic pouches and a pocket because I figure as a medic and a cook, she's got a lot of stuff she has to carry around with her. And for her main combat weapons, I did give her some little healing magic that I guess she could conjure up to heal small wounds. More importantly, her staff just looks like a giant spork. Great for stabbing, great for stirring the soup that's for dinner. I definitely feel like a spork is the best utensil to use to eat a pierogi, and no, I will not be explaining what I just said. To get into some of the little details, I added a bunch of embroidery, of course, the little poncho capelet. She's got a little cross X in the middle to symbolize that she is a medic, and then it just has a bunch of other little green and floral motifs with some actual flowers on the shoulders. And I love the trim that's on the capelet and on the apron because I tried to make it look like tiny little caramelized onions hanging off because, like I said, that is also a very big part of this dish. And last but not least, she also has a little headband with 2 pierogis on it, along with some flowers and some baby's breath, mostly because flowers in the hair also seem to be a recurring theme within traditional Polish clothing. Also, I just think it looks really cute. In the end, I don't think this is the strongest design, but I think along with pizza, this is the one that leans most on the edge of subtlety, which is a nice touch. But I do think that pierogis still come through in the general idea and theme. And with that, all of this week's food girls are done, and I think they're really, really cute, even though, like I said, by the end, they're just leaning full on into camp. But I still had a lot of fun. I think this was a good exercise, especially since going in, I knew that it was going to be a challenge. I've been pretty happy with the last couple sets of designs that I've been doing in these episodes, so I think continuing to challenge myself is always a good idea, even if I do it begrudgingly. Anyways, I think my favorite design is pizza. Do let me know in the comments below what your favorite design is, and also, as always, feel free to speculate wildly about names and backstories. I swear I will get back to choosing names eventually. I've just been a little busy here lately. But with that, go eat your favorite food today. You deserve it. Hello, and welcome to the end of the video. Thank you all so much for placing your eyeballs on my video this week, but of course the biggest thank you as always goes to my patrons, especially my executive producers. Eltlin, my deepest apologies. Zyel S, Shaylee, Sable Skies, The Cat's Bark, Alwyn Hayes, Thea Maia, Ruled by Pluto, Agent Sketchy, Wolven_Arts, Corvid Dome, Lovisa, Eloquent Silence, In the Galaxy, Cleos, Meeks Hunter, Megan Penland, Sushi McNushi, Satoni, Mel W, Jim Jiminy, India Gloom, Hypnos, Refmlings, Katie, Michael Twycross, Sweet Winter Garden, Gravity Drop, Panda Pie 365, Bobo McFo, Will Schmidt, and Bean the Bread. If you would like to become a patron and gain access to exclusive behind-the-scenes content on my videos, the link will be in the description. Oh God, I'm already getting so hungry.